This is the life history of Thomas Edward Foulkes. I was born in Pasadena, California on December 3rd, 1930. I was named after my father's brother Thomas Edward Foulkes. This is a picture of my mother, Mayella Foulkes. Her maiden name was Swartwell. My mother was always very congenial to others. I think her philosophy in life was to live and let live. Even though she worked full-time, I do not remember my dad or myself helping her with the housework. This is a picture of my father, Caradoc Cadwallander Foulkes. My dad was an angry man. I remember many mornings that my mother would be crying after my father left for work because of something he had said to her, but he was also had a very tender heart. My mother took over the family finances because Dad would give the money to anyone who had a need or a needy cause. As the saying goes, he would give the shirt off his back if you needed it. During the Depression, my dad was out of work for a long time. He got so depressed that he attempted suicide by jumping off the Colorado Street Bridge. My mom's sister, Aunt Grace, came by and persuaded him not to jump. The bridge later became known as Suicide Bridge. This is the men in our family. I'm not sure what year it was taken. I think it was the late 1930s. In the back row is David and Clifton, and Dad and I are in the front. You get an idea from this picture why my dad was called Shorty by his fellow workers. This is my brother David Charles Foulkes. Since David was 10 years older than me, I don't remember much about David's living at home. This is my brother Clifton Arthur Foulkes. They called him Cliff, or Red, due to his red hair. He was a very happy young man. And many times I can remember hearing him whistling as he came down the street from his job at Bell Small Animal Hospital. Clifton soon went off to war. He was in the Coast Guard and was killed in an automobile accident before he could return home after the war. This is my grandmother, Minnie Swartwell. Her maiden name was Field. My grandmother was a very devout Nazarene. What I admired best about Grandma was her accepting attitude and love for the Lord. She was a tough cookie, as evidenced by her leaving her alcoholic husband, taking her youngest boy Clifton, and moving to be near her daughter in California. Later, my parents followed her. That's how we ended up in Pasadena. And she lived with us. She attended Central Church of the Nazarene. It was down the alley from our house. I'd walk her down the alley to church. Soon, the youth of the church approached me to become part of their youth group. This was an important milestone in my life. I thank God that He brought Grandma into our home. It was God's perfect timing. I was blessed to be raised in a Christian home and had a grandmother who passed that Christian heritage to my mother, who then passed it to me. This is a family Christmas picture taken in early 1930s. I'm the blurred little boy in the front. I never could stand still. The little boy on the far right was my cousin Robert Reed. His parents are right behind him. On my right is my cousin Bernice Swartwell, and her parents, Uncle Clifton and Aunt Helen, are behind her. To the right of Bernice is my grandmother. Uncle Frank and Aunt Grace McGuire are on the far left side. Behind me at my left is my brother Clifton, and my parents are behind Clifton. My brother David is looking over Dad's right shoulder. This is Alexander Hamilton Elementary School, which was kindergarten through 6th grade. It is just one block from my home at 40 South Craig. Inside the school, I don't think they've spent much money modernizing this school since I left. Notice the old pipes and lighting. I guess the best part of school for me was lunch. I ate my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, every day the same, on a picnic table set up under a pavilion. This is Woodward Wilson Junior High School, 7th grade through 10th grade. It is now called Woodward Wilson Middle School, and it's one of the 12 middle schools in Pasadena. I graduated from here in June 1956. Wilson was only about 2 miles from my house, so most of the time I rode my bike to school. This is the 10th grade graduation class picture. I'm the third from the right in the last row. This is a picture of me in 1947, I think. This is my high school graduation picture from Pasadena City College, grade 12. This is Pasadena City College, where I spent 11th and 12th grade and maybe a quarter of 13th grade. It was Pasadena Junior College District, lower division. It was called just Pasadena Junior College when I attended. I became involved with a youth group and attended Sunday evening services with them. The Nazarenes have long altar calls every Sunday evening, and I became convicted, but I fought going down that aisle and being saved. One Sunday, one of the mothers of a youth group member came by, took me by the arm, and said she'd go down with me. That's all I needed. I do not remember her name or what date that was, but it was the best day of my life as I gave my life to the Lord. I hope someday in heaven to find out who she was and to thank her. I attended Milwaukee Bible Institute from January 1949 through January 1952. This is a picture of the MBI Tower House, which held offices in some classrooms. Most of the classes, the cafeteria, etc., were held in a 2-floor building built on the back side of the lot. And to be taught the Bible by such men as Charles Baker, C.R. Stam, was a fantastic blessing. While attending MBI, I met the love of my life, Jean Gephardt, from Chicago, Illinois. I was attracted to her within a few months of meeting her. Jean was not only beautiful, but she also had a great singing voice. We were friends at school, but I did not think such a beautiful and talented girl would ever be seriously interested in me. This is my sweetheart, Jean Gephardt. Jean gave me this picture on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1950. Needless to say, I was thrilled. I could not believe that such a beautiful and talented girl could love me. This was one of the happiest days of my life, and it was the first clue I had that she really cared for me. So our friendship quickly changed to romance. Since that day, I don't think there has been a day that I ever doubted either her love or her commitment to me. We were married at Grace Community Church in Riverdale, Illinois on June 30th, 1951 by Pastor Richard Post. This was taken in 2010 at former Grace Community Church building at 105 142nd Street in Riverdale, Illinois, where we were married. It is great that the building is now a child care learning center named Successful Beginnings. It was a successful beginning for our marriage. This is my dad's at Mother's home in Duarte. We lived here with my parents for a few months. On July 15th, 1952, our first child, Cheryl Lynn, was born, and we brought her home to this house. In the morning, following our first night we spent with our new baby, we were awakened by the Venetian blinds rattling as Jean and Cheryl experienced their first California earthquake. David Dwayne Foulkes was added to our family on January 30th, 1954. Our next move was to pastor a church in Cadillac, Michigan. We were there just 1.5 years, but it was the toughest but most wonderful year and a half. Before I was called to pastor the church, our marriage had reached a low point. I was so busy, quote unquote, serving the Lord that I did not take time for Jean. Jean had told me that I was a hypocrite and that she would not go across the street to hear me preach. Yet in humility, love, and grace, Jean not only went across the street, but moved away from her family in Chicago and moved far north to a little church in Cadillac. The Lord used Cadillac to change my attitude about both marriage and life. I came to Cadillac proud and selfish and left broken, but humbled and more sensitive to both Jean's needs and mine. This is a picture of the Berean Bible Church parsonage. When I first came to Cadillac, this was a garage. This is a collage of pictures from when my parents came to visit in Cadillac. And Cheryl is sitting on the side steps that go into the church. When we came back to Chicago, we rented several apartments and houses. And in 1957, we rented a house in Markham, where we lived when Randy was born. In 1958 to 1960, we moved to Chicago Heights, where Marcia was born. At that time, I was working for Papa Gep's Cleaners, picking up and delivering clothes. Then in 1960, we bought our first home at 154 West 156th Street in Harvey. We lived in Harvey till July 7th, 1967, when we moved to Riverdale. On June 23rd, 1957, Randall Clifton Foulkes was added to our family. And on July 8th, 1958, shortly after Randy's first birthday, we gave him a playmate, Marcia Jean Foulkes. During their growing years, they were not only close in age, they were very great pals. This is our second home at 3727 Atlantic Avenue, Riverdale, Illinois. When we first moved in on July 8th, 1967, it was only a 2-bedroom home with a basement and an attic. Moving in with 4 children meant that the 2 boys slept in the basement, and since Marcia was in a cast from being hit by a car, she slept in a hospital bed in the dining room. Papa Gep, my father-in-law, loaned us money to build bedrooms in the attic. I never done anything like this in my life, but with the guidance of Papa Gep and Jean's brother Dwayne, I was able to build 2 rooms. This is Grace Bible Church in Riverdale, Illinois. This was a church, it was then called Open Bible Church, that Jean attended as a child. One of the reasons we moved to Riverdale was to be near this church. In fact, it was just 2.5 blocks away from where we lived. But about a year after we moved to Riverdale, we became dissatisfied and left this church. We then drove 8 miles to Hilltop Bible Church in Crestwood. So much for living close to church. The sign over the church, Christ died for our sins, was donated by Papa Gep in memory of Mama Gep. Passengers on the platform of the Illinois Railroad station and those in the train could see this sign when they're commuting to work or shop downtown Chicago. These next are pictures of our family. This was a Christmas in 1973. This is Christmas 1974. This is Christmas 1975. In 1976, our 25th wedding anniversary. This is Christmas 1976. And this is Christmas 1977. This is in 1981, our 40th wedding anniversary. This picture was taken in 1981, cleaning up after Buffy. That was my favorite dog. Buffy was the best trained dog that I owned. When Gina and I would take a ride on our tandem bike, Buffy would, and not on a leash, run along beside the bike. When we stopped at the corner, he would automatically sit down and wait for my signal to go. And nothing, at least that I remember, distracted him, even barking dogs. In 1988, we were tandem bikers. We greatly enjoyed riding our tandem bicycle. We would ride around on some Saturday mornings, stop at a garage sale or two, and usually end up in South Holland for coffee and pastry at a local restaurant, and then ride back to Riverdale. We bought these shirts when we attended a rally for tandem bikers touring Springfield, Illinois. It was a fun ride, but since ours was an old one-speed bike, we couldn't keep up with the others on the hills. They were amazed as they looked at our old bike. On February 28, 1993, I retired from Reynolds Metals Company. On March 1st, we moved to Holland, Michigan. That was 2 stressful changes at one time. In fact, the doctor had me on a heart monitor for a short time because I was having pains in my chest from the stress. I was excited about both events, but the uncertainty that went with it was too much at one time. The banners you see in the picture here are typical of our banners that we display off the front porch. I rotate the banners on a monthly basis. They say that variety is the spice of life. Here you can see one of the problems in Holland. It's the snow. When we first moved here, I would use my quote-unquote Chicago snowblower. Named Chicago was because it only blew snow to the side. Gene was afraid I would have a heart attack shoveling snow. But the drifts were too high. I needed a snowblower with a spout that would throw it up over the piles. A Holland snowblower out of Chicago. This is a picture of our 50th wedding anniversary in 2001. For a short time, the church board recognized volunteer workers with a Smooth Stone Award. And in May 2004, I was honored to have my name added to this plaque. Here I'm dressed as Patrick Henry. I think it was on a July 4th Sunday in 2004. Dr. Henry Hudson was preaching and asked me to read Patrick Henry's famous "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech. I came dressed as Patrick Henry, made a surprise entrance, and dramatically presented Patrick Henry's March 23, 1775 speech. This is a picture of our granddaughter Amy's graduation from Cornerstone College in 2005. Here's a picture from Christmas 2006. In this picture, I'm helping Jane decide the right foods to order from the menu. I would figure out the number of carbs and let her know how much Humalog she needed to keep her sugar in control. I think this is somewhere on the Oregon coast during our 2006 adventure trip to Washington, Oregon with John and Cheryl. Here's another picture from the 2006 Oregon coast. In fall 2006, we had an adventure trip with Randy and Beth to Niagara Falls and then on to Washington, D.C. This is a 2007 trip with Norman Garland to the Redwoods in Northern California, and then on to San Francisco. Here's a picture of Mom, Dad, and kids in 2009. This picture was taken at Baldwin Lake in Los Angeles County Arboretum and Botanic Garden located across from the Santa Anita racetrack. We were on a 2010 adventure trip to Pasadena, California with John and Cheryl. I played in this area before it was an arboretum. During my teen years, I remember one time I left my pet alligator in the swamps near this lake. Originally, alligator was in my mother's fish pond, 26 South Craig, but since it started eating her fish, she said I had to find a new home. After I let the alligator loose, I asked a worker if they had any alligators in the area, and replied, only when we're making movies. They made some of the Tarzan movies there. As I was leaving, I said under my breath, well, you do now. I was a mean kid. We're thankful to God that on February 24th, 2011, Todd DuBose, Public Relations Representative for Charter Communication, presented us with a $3,000 check. Todd said about 20,000 customers entered their contest offered by Charter, our cable provider, and we won. Next are pictures of some people that greatly influenced my life. Dr. Walter A. Meyer, 1948. He was the first pastor that had a big impact on my life. Dr. Meyer, speaker for the Lutheran Hour radio broadcast, was in town for a rally at the Hollywood Bowl. The owner of Ruckless Insurance and used car company attended the Lutheran church and volunteered to provide a car and a driver for Dr. Meyer for the weekend. He sent me with a big black Buick to chauffeur Dr. Meyer for the weekend. His intense commitment made a lasting impression on me. Later in life, two people at Hilltop Bible Church in Crestwood, Illinois, had a strong influence on me. The first person was Pastor Eldon Callahan. He was a people person. When you're talking to Eldon, he made you feel like you were the most important person in the world at that moment. He set an example before me of loving others more than you love yourself. He taught me to exercise the gift or talent that God has given you to the best of your ability. The second person at Hilltop to greatly influence my life was Vic Gervais. When Vic first came to Hilltop, one look told me he was a biker and a hippie, and I figured he would never return. How wrong I was. Vic did come back, and I soon discovered that he was a wonderful, spiritual man. He put me to shame. He actually was. The most important lesson that Vic taught me was that spirituality is an inside and not an outside matter. Not to judge people but how they look, but to accept people as they are. I hope if one word was chosen to describe my life, it would be the word faithful. I pray that the words of 2 Timothy 4:7-8 will be said about me when I graduate to heaven, that I've fought a good fight, I've finished my course, and I've kept the faith, and a crown of righteousness is laid up for me in